Hi, my name's Sheehan, and today I'd like to talk about The Kraken Wakes by Wyndham. I'd like to go through this novel, first published in 1953, exploring the themes and the structure. And I guess if you could sum this book up, it's really about the Earth being under attack from deep sea dwelling aliens. And the book is helpfully structured in three phases with a rationale at the beginning. And with the rationale, this brief chapter at the beginning, we're introduced to Mike and Phyllis Watson. They're narrating in the aftermath of something terrible. We can't quite work out what it is. We know there's icebergs floating in the seas, and they're thinking about how they're going to put what they have experienced into words in a book. And Mike seems to be drawing inspiration from Alfred Lord Tennyson's poem The Kraken. So we know that something has happened in the depths of the sea. So in phase one, we learn a bit more about Mike and Phyllis Watson. They're husband and wife team, and they're journalists who work for the EBC, which is a broadcasting company, a rival to the BBC. And they're journalists. They're on their honeymoon in the tropics somewhere on this ship, and one moonlit night they notice these red comets coming out of the sky, and they see one just plunge right into the sea nearby. Of course, they're completely fascinated by this occurrence. What are these red comets? What's all this about? And it turns out that these comets have been falling down into the sea around the world. No one seems to be that bothered about it, really. But Mike and Phyllis know something weird is happening. Eventually the Navy decides to lower this machine called a bathoscope down into the depths to see if there's anything going on down there. And this deep sea capsule is attacked by this oval shaped entity, and the crew are killed. And these ships begin to disappear. The Navy and the military try to drop these atomic mines, these atomic bombs down to the bottom of the water. And then we're introduced to this guy called Bocker. He's Professor Bocker, I think he is. He's this kind of boffin who seems to have this theory about what might be happening. He suggests that maybe the comets and these ships going missing and these submersible capsules being attacked, maybe they're linked. And he thinks that whatever's down in the depths of the sea has to be down there because they have to be in a highly pressured environment. And they hypothesized that perhaps they're from a gas planet like Jupiter, these creatures who are down there. But they're right in the very depths of the sea, and no one can go down there, of course. One of the bombs the military release into the water goes missing, and they realise it's been detonated, not by the Navy, but by something else, it seems. So phase one really introduces us to this rather worrying mystery. It's in phase two that things get really heated. More ships go missing. They're sunk. A Japanese liner, big passenger ship, goes missing. Things seem to be on a far greater scale now, and the Queen Anne, the British liner, disappears as well. Military vessels as well, navy ships, warships, are sunk. And finally the governments around the world seem to be waking up to this problem. And it's here we're introduced to this this tension between the Soviet Union and the West. It's very much in the background of this story. Of course, this was written in the height of the Cold War. There's also reports of people being attacked on islands, and no one can quite work out what's going on, but this slime is left behind. So Mike and Phyllis Watson are hired by the EBC to go with Bocker and kind of scientific crew and group of journalists to this island called Escondida in the Caribbean, and they're waiting for an attack to see who or what is exactly attacking these islands. And to begin with, they're left alone. Neighbouring islands are attacked, but then sure enough, their island Escondida is attacked. And here we see what's going on. There's this panic by the shore. These people are running around going crazy, and these kind of dull silver, they call them sea tanks, come up from the sea. They're described as elongated eggs cut in half, and they come up into the town square, and these bubbles seem to kind of grow from them and explode, and these tentacles fly everywhere in quite a horrific way and grab people around them and pull these people in. The people are completely stuck to these tentacles, they can't be freed from them, and they're pulled to their doom, and eventually these sea tanks go back to the sea. Phyllis has a narrow escape. She gets caught by one, but Mike manages to free her at the cost of causing her some harm, some injury. But she suggests maybe it's like shrimping. These creatures are hunting people. It's then that Bocker, this kind of boffin, he's perhaps not the best at communicating to the outside world, but he's like the lone voice who really understands, seems to have the best idea of what's going on. But people are kind of dismissing him by and large in the media and in the government, much to their peril. And Phyllis and Mike are traumatised by what they've seen on this island. Phyllis kind of is almost driven to this kind of suicidal state of mind, as is Mike. He has to go and seek counselling and therapy. So they're both in a really dark place, and of course they're worrying that this whole thing's going to escalate. But the government and society at large seem very slow on the uptake. And sure enough, Mike learns of attacks not in the middle of the sea on these tiny islands, but they're beginning to attack larger land masses, including Madrid in Ireland and eventually England as well. So the creatures are very close to home indeed. However, just as you think that they're going to take over the world, the attacks stop abruptly, and Bocker at the end of this phase ponders what the Barthes motives are. The Barthes, that's what he labels these creatures that live deep under the sea. We're now into phase 3, the final part of the book, and we've skipped forward a little bit, and Mike and Phyllis seem to be living in this post-apocalyptic nightmare where everything's flooded and you can't go anywhere freely. People are checking where you're going, etc. Everyone seems to be on boats. How has this happened? Well, we soon find out. It turns out that these Barthes, these creatures deep under the sea, have been warming the icebergs of Greenland and the Arctic, etc. And of course this has been causing the sea level to rise, very kind of relevant today perhaps, and with that, the world is beginning to flood. And with the world beginning to flood comes a breakdown of order. And we're focused on London really here, to build these massive walls around the River Thames to protect the city. Of course, these are futile in the end, and the water escapes, and people are just running for the higher ground, and people become very kind of cutthroat and looking after themselves, as you can imagine would be the case. Food becomes scarce, resources are prized, and Mike and Phyllis end up stuck in the top floor of a department store on Oxford Street in central London. Selfridges, I think it's supposed to be, although I think they call it Selvidges or something. And this is the temporary HQ of the EBC, their media company. But then they realise things are just getting desperate for them, and they really want to get back to Cornwall from London. That's where their kind of holiday home is. And so eventually they begin this perilous journey back to Cornwall on their boat. And it's a treacherous journey, not only because provisions are scarce, but also people are so hostile to each other and so protective of their own territories, as land is now such a valuable commodity. They eventually get back to Cornwall, and Phyllis reveals she's hidden some food before, which is handy. But then this guy who sails up to their place, who Mike recognises as a local, he says that there's broadcasts going out saying that they're required to come back to London. It seems there is some hope. It seems that there's some progress against the Baathies. Indeed, it seems that they are on the verge of being defeated, and that some kind of new government needs to be formed to help reconstruct society, and Mike and Phyllis are required for this with their expertise and their knowledge. The novel ends with some hope for the future. So this book, deals a lot with fear of the unknown. These creatures which live deep under the sea, and it's a terrifying prospect, because it's just so, even today, of course, it's still much of the very deep is unknown. So there's that anxiety, a deep-rooted anxiety about the depths. And of course the story is set in a kind of post-apocalyptic nightmare for much of it, similar to other Wyndham novels. There's much about hope and hopelessness, mental breakdown as well as breakdown of law and order, as well as the lone voice of reason represented by Bocker. And it is an effective novel. It's the passage which really sticks out for me is the terrifying and incredibly vivid chapter where the island is attacked where they are, and it really is scary. You can really picture it, the confusion, the terror of the locals, these strange machines coming up, hearing them first, and then seeing these weird things coming to the square, and these terrifying tentacle-like creatures just flinging themselves everywhere and just dragging people in these kind of balls of flesh stuck together, dragging them into the sea. Is just absolutely terrifying. It really is brilliantly written as well. I mean, it's just really fantastic, and seems to be quite a scathing critique of authority as well, particularly the government. They don't come across well in this at all, and of course we might relate to that in these post-COVID times, perhaps in certain places of the world. Indeed, the whole premise of the book, this kind of terrible thing happening globally, seems very pertinent for today's readership. So it's an effective book, and it's an enjoyable book, and it's in many ways a frightening book. Maybe the pace slows down a bit around the end of phase 2, the beginning of phase 3. But overall, The Kraken Wakes is a worthy successor to The Day of the Triffids, and a really good novel, and I do recommend it, particularly if you're into this kind of dystopian post-apocalyptic sci-fi. Thanks for watching. There's just a brief slideshow of the themes and structure after this. Bye.